Okay, so welcome everyone to our, I guess this is our fifth Zoom chat with the Rhubarb Collective. And just a reminder, the Rhubarb Collective is Jill Vandal of the Tourism Company, Shannon Guillen of the Travel Corporation, Amanda Jopling of GSM Project, and Fran Hull of CBRE Tourism and Leisure Group. I'm also of CBRE Tourism and Leisure Group. And unfortunately, Chris Hughes of BC Hughes Destination Development and Management cannot be with us today. He has another presentation, so we're a lady rhubarb group today. So once again, this group has come together to just provide a forum for peers to chat about the current crisis in the Canadian tourism industry, discuss ideas, and really, you know, for us as tourism professionals to hear from you and to get a sense of the experience you're going through. So all of these chats are being recorded. They are uploaded to our website, rhubarbcollective.com. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jill to get us started on today's chat.
Great, thanks, Rebecca. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good nodding, okay. Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for joining us, because I know everybody has a ton of options with your time, with new openings and webinars, et cetera. So thank you for joining us. Today we want to look at visitor touch points and the visitor journey that we go through that are quite different right now. I think all of us understand that there's touch points in terms of visitors now that need spraying and cleaning and changing, but we want to look at the visitor touch points and look at the journey and make it a bit more customized and more human in nature. What I want to do today is look at really the before and during part of the visitor touch process. I think the after we can deal with later on, but I think we have limited time today, so thought we'd have a bit of fun on the before and during. I'm going to suggest a 4-step process for us to guide our thinking. And it assumes that everybody, first of all, follows the industry-specific health and safety guidelines and protocols, of which there are a ton now. Some great resources from international, national, sector-specific, regional, etc. So that's the first one. So the first step in the 4-stage process is, I think you need to assume that you're starting a new business or you're starting from scratch. Because you are. And I think that approach will start to help to open up some creativity and renewal for your business or your destination. And I think you need to rethink everything you do. So that's number one. I'm going to go over the 4 steps and we'll come back to it. The second one, I think, is identifying and understand your new guests. And that's to customize both the experience and the message. And some examples there are, if you're used to targeting adult-only fishing parties and you now want to attract family bubbles, I think you've got some changes to do. And if you're positioned to attract visitors from the UK or Germany, and you're used to dealing with them in terms of how you get from the airport to your operation, and now you're looking at people next door, again, that's a different need. If any of you are leading an event, a festival, or a major attraction, and now you're targeting someone nearby, I'm guessing there's a few people in that mix who haven't been there since high school. And they're now parents and grandparents. So I'm just wondering if there's sort of different perceptions, misperceptions, reference points, questions and concerns across all of those sectors. So that's the second step, is to identify and understand your new guests. The third one then, once you understand them, is layering in site, community, or operation specific reference points. And that can be anything from tone to language to the experience that you deliver. So that's number 3. And number 4 is communicating what you expect from your visitors and what they can expect from you. So those are sort of the 4 steps. Start new, understand your new guests, layer in site, community, or operation specific reference points, communicate. So I'm going to take a pause. Is there anybody on the call who has a really different type of guest that they're targeting from their normal operation they'd like to share with the group? Nobody? Is anyone, are you still there? Okay, so I suspect you are though. So, but take some time, take a step back to make sure you understand that. Then let's go into the before the visit part of the visitor journey. And I want to first start by looking at communities. Those of you in Ontario know that day trippers from urban areas looking for a day at the beach have had really different messages from different communities. And that's continuing across the country. Some very clearly say, don't come. Others use a softer approach. And some communities have no mention of COVID at all, which I find quite confusing. Revelstoke, BC uses a combination of COVID-specific updates and plan on visiting when you can messages. And by the way, all the references I'm making examples here will be on the website with a blog post a day or so after we finish this, so you can go in and look them all up with the hyperlinks. So Revelstoke does three things really well, and they have a call to action to each step. One is, we're busy preparing and can't wait for you to visit. Visit virtually. The second thing they do is, here's a list of what's open, what's opening soon, and what's not open. And that list is regularly updated and helps to manage expectations. The call to action is, plan your visit. The third option Revelstoke does is an option to receive email updates on reopening, sign up now. So again, if you've got people nearby who want to know if the major attraction's opening or if what the requirements are for the parks, they've got their email into Revelstoke, and then Revelstoke's acting on behalf of the area DMO partners to get that message out. So I think from a before the visit community, that's a great example. Any comments or suggestions there from a community perspective? Okay.
I was just going to say, Jill, sorry.
No, great.
No, but just in terms of what I've seen and what seems to be working is just communicate. I mean, even if you don't have a policy in place yet, put that up on your website so that somebody going to look for, you know, like, I want to go to the Art Gallery of Ontario. Okay, I understand it's closed, but I want to see what they've been thinking about and how they're, you know, potentially looking to bring me back later.
Great example. And as I said to you earlier, looking at some of the sites and some of the destinations, they have nothing on COVID. That still shocks me. So your point's well taken. I think the other thing from a community perspective is, and this is, you know, if Chris were here, he'd certainly be helping out with this one. But so if I am driving through or by, what about publicly accessible washrooms? You know, that's a pretty basic question. Anyway, so take a look at your community level and see if there's anything new you want to answer. Fran, did you have something to share there?
Yeah, this morning I was reading about Wasaga Beach because they are opening the gates this weekend on Friday. And the mayor is very concerned because you're inviting everybody back to the community. At the same time, the parking lots are under construction because the parks are working on the parking lots right now, and there are no public washrooms. So what does that mean?
And another Ontario community, the message was, you know, you might want to come, but you're not going to get the services that you're used to. So again, to Rebecca's point, it's, you know, understanding your customers and what information they need and getting it out there. So communication for sure is the main thing to do. So again, if before the visit, let's move to some business examples about how they're dealing with their situation. Chambar Restaurant in downtown Vancouver has been open for a while now, and they've posted a 1 minute and 10-second video titled #TheNewNormal to lay out what to expect. What it does really well, it shows their setting with their staff, what you're going to expect. So instead of having a basic graphic that says we're going to move tables farther apart, we're going to have you sign in so that we know how to get in touch with you if there's been a breakout in it while you were here, it's showing their place. And the great thing is it starts out with a video with the welcome back theme from Cotter. So again, welcome back. So it helps people, it sets the tone, it shares in their casual theme of the restaurant. So getting great messages, making it a bit more human. The next one on the before example is Sandals, and they've reported the resorts in the Caribbean, and they've posted a 3 minute and 40-second video highlighting their platinum protocols of cleanliness. And again, it shows their sites, but it has a really strong link to remaining the a romantic destination for couples that hasn't changed. Music, mood, tone all differ, and it lines up with their brand. And of course, it's a more than twice the length. It's a bigger investment than going for a 90-minute meal than a 1 or 2 week vacation. So good example of what to do before in terms of your messaging and being a little bit more human. The last one I want to share on the before one is the Winnipeg Art Gallery. They've been open since mid-May, and they do a great job of addressing questions right up front. So they've got the reopening protocols page on their website. Below that, then, they've fed into the streams that some questions that people have answered, so that if you're going to read the reopening protocols part of the page, then down below are some really common questions that other people have asked that they've answered. One of them being, if you're taking just cash and I don't have, will you take cash? Because everyone's trying to do touchless payment. And they just answer it. So then people have got the answer right away. Any other examples of the before?
I know I've used this one before, but if anyone wasn't on the call, I really like the example of Houston. So they had Visit Hugh, and just trying to understanding that they're not getting tourists right now, doing these virtual dinner parties, which, you know, everybody wants to eat out, and getting people to support their local restaurants and then take photos of it, hashtag it, all the rest of that. I just thought they did it really early on, and it was a way, and of course the first people that are going to come back are friends and family. So you know, if these people, the locals, are doing this already, then as soon as their friends and family start visiting, they'll be doing the same thing.
Thank you for that segue into an article I read by McKinsey this morning, which talks about the return to tourism from China. And the research they're showing is interesting because it's saying that the young and non-family visitors under 30 are the first to travel, which I don't think is a surprise to any of us on the call. But what's interesting is if your operation isn't in those social media channels, you're not going to reach them. So it goes back to the process: start from scratch, understand your customers, layer in site operation specific touches, and communicate. So if your new guests are going to be not the boomers that you're already lined up with and you're in all their channels and you're on Facebook, guess what? The under 30s are not on Facebook. So you need to tailor your messaging and where it goes if you're going to be successful.
Yeah, I had another personal example of that. I got an email or Facebook or something from my Rotary son who's in Austria, who indicated he's already gone on a Croatian sailing trip, and they're one of the few that did it, and they were the only people in the marina. But they're young and they're more apt to take, if you call it a risk, but they're more apt to get out there immediately.
So again, as you communicate and refine your experiences, if that's the case for you, that's a really different type of customer than you're used to dealing with. So with your permission, I'd like to move on to the during the visit part. And this is where we can have a bit more fun, I think. I'm going to focus in on the layering and on the site and operation specific touches, and hope that you have some to share with us. I think the first thing you need to do is take a fresh look at what you offer. And I think a number of you have touched on that, is will it meet their new and returning guest needs, and what needs adjusting. I think a lot of you have heard about the mannequins in the restaurants. And I think the example that you'll see on the blog post when I get it up is the Michelin star restaurant at the Little Inn in Washington. It's a Relais Chateau in Virginia in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And it's filling up half its dining room with mannequins. So instead of Xing out a table or taking them out and making the dining room look really empty, which is 50% capacity, they've worked with a local theatrical company to dress them up in period costumes to reflect the look, feel, and brand of the restaurant. Now, that particular owner of the restaurant, Charles, is right into drama. And there was a lampshade over every table anyway. So if he took out half the tables, people would be walking around and bumping into lampshades. So it served a purpose to keep the flow of the room well. But by putting them dressed up and at the tables, it sort of feels like it's partially full, and it keeps a distancing, and yet it's a bit more human. So yes, it's a bit creepy. There was an example the other night on the National with someone's doing it in Newfoundland as well. But it's for Charles, it's a story. It relates to his brand and his theme of his restaurant. So that one's kind of fun. Okay, this is the new Windstar Wave. Windstar is the operator of the world's largest sailing yachts. So now they've said onboard functions will be conducted without handshakes by our officers and crew. But do look out for our new Windstar Wave. Working together, we'll keep ourselves and our people in the community we visit healthy. So it's just a fun thing. It's customized. It reflects the fact that they still want to say hello without elbow bumping, hip bumping, ankle bumping, whatever it is, and that's their wave. So it's, again, it's a bit more human to say a bit social. A couple of other things you can do to customize it or overlay things at your own position or your own site is, I think you can create or refine experiences by using built and outdoor spaces in new ways for visitors, experiences you haven't typically used in the past. So rather than closing things off, take a look at your outside spaces. I think that's a more logical place for people to do experiences. And again, we've heard some cool things happening in cities and other places. Some examples: lobbies, porches, decks for micro concerts, small group happy hour or family activity. Theater performances with guests watching from circles of cars surrounding it in the parking lot. I thought that was a cool one. How many operations, David MacLachlan, have a barge? And you can have barge parties with the barge dressed up, of course, and a floating cocktail party or dinner for 2, 4, or 6, depending on what the bugs are like. But again, these are, in each of these examples, they're satisfying the need to stay apart, but they feel like, and are premium experiences that I think pent-up demand may actually pay more for. But again, it's a humanized experience. And I think it's a neat way to differentiate. Instead of just coming and keeping you apart, we're making some fun of the space and we're using it to give you a great guest experience.
Yeah, I really like that idea of giving guests something that they don't already have. You know, don't just give me a table 6 feet away from somebody else. Make it a little bit unique if you can, understanding that, you know, you still have, from the operator's perspective, you know, to be careful for your own staff and so on. But you know, I mean, interestingly, with the zoo, this whole idea of drive-through, it's not new. African Lion Safari was doing it long ago, but they have virtual overnight camps, and they have a bunch of different things that, wow, I can't send my kid to camp this year, so, you know, make it a little bit fun and unique, like you're saying.
Yeah. So again, looking at each stage of the visitor journey or the visitor touch points for sure. Continuing on then in the during phase, the visiting phase is again, reimagine your site to include welcoming spaces indoor and out. And again, landscaping that helps to create pods for small groups. So where you place chairs, plants, etc. And then also comfortable chairs, couches, lighting, and layouts that discourage distancing, but don't make it feel like you've done that to make sure people stay away from each other. So a lot of sites and hotels and resorts are getting rid of furniture and placing them in comfortable pods. So that's something you can do in terms of making it a welcoming experience. I think in all of this, you have an opportunity to tie in with you and your local story as much as possible. So use hand sanitizers made by local distilleries, soaps by local folks. Again, it's part of the experience on site. How many of you have more than one style of mask right now? Am I the only one? Yeah. I have 3 styles because they're not quite doing it for me. But I think masks, and number one, what we call them, and then I think the fabric and style, the colors, formal or informal, to match your brand is part of your on-site experience. I talked about sandals earlier. Their face coverings all have the sandals logo on them. Their colors match their uniform. They're upscale and professional to match their brand. The Little Inn at Washington I talked about, the restaurant, has created custom-made masks bearing Marilyn Monroe smiles and George Washington chins. And of course, Disney, what do they have? Mickey and Minnie. So it's fun, focused on brand. So I think the masks and how you use them is a really fun place to bring in your local story if someone can make them locally. You know, it might be plaid if you're up in the bush. It might be a fish-based one if you're a lodge, et cetera, et cetera. In fact, one of the Fredericton-based shirt company, Jeff Alpa Customs, he's a shirt manufacturer who pivoted to masks, and he calls them face apparel. So again, the language we use, so face wrap, face apparel, face protection, rather than mask, takes it from being a health and safety requirement to being a different thing that we all now that we know we need. I think the other fun you can have on site is images and materials you use to resonate with your customers. I originally had one canoe length apart, but I realized that's way too far apart. So it's about a gunnel and a half of, but again, if you're on site, what makes sense? How many walleyes apart makes sense? How many ski poles? How many bikes? So that again, if you're dealing with a specific community or resident or whatever, think about that. Sandals, in terms of language, stays focused on being a romantic couples report. Their signage says, "Our love knows these bounds," to make sure people stay apart. And if there's one thing on the signage side, I'd say to you, please invest in professional signs. I'm really tired of seeing things taped up. And I think it's just a great thing to do because I think they're going to be around for a while. So I'm going to take a bit of a pause and open it up and just ask for some questions or examples in terms of, I'm not going to go to the after part. I think I want to leave, we can do that another time. But again, on the customer journey, the before and the during stage, any questions or suggestions or anything you want to share in terms of new types of customers you're dealing with, any layering in or customization you've been able to do, or any communicating that you want to share with folks from a destination or operation perspective.
Jill, I'm just going to jump on because I think the idea of signage is very important. So, and that's because I work with a design firm. But I'll give you a personal experience. This weekend, we went to Dairy Queen. Unbeknownst to us, Dairy Queen has a drive-through. Although you didn't know that they had a drive-through because there was no signage to tell you that the drive-through or where it was. And the sign, which you would normally go through above the door, says open. So people were parking their vehicles to go to a door to not be able to open the door and to not know that you had to basically go a good block past something else to know that that's where the drive-through was. So although people were really looking forward to the experience, there was a bit of a letdown there because we didn't know where to go. On the other side of that, I have seen a plethora of signage, you know, every 2 seconds. I think it's worthwhile going a little bit further than that and working with local people, as you say, to invest in some signage and to adapt it. So I've seen some really fun things, and we can post those on your blog later. In terms of face masks, I'm one of those. I have a few. It's got to match your outfit. We're going to wear them every day. But they are quite easy to customize. So there are available now as camps in some regions are starting to happen. They're doing sun visors. You know, the little sun hats for kids with the visors over top and a smiley face. Working with a client right now that wants to do them and build astronaut hats, essentially, with face masks. And then you can just play on it and have a hazmat suit and the whole 9 yards and still look like an astronaut. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for creativity rather than just the basic health and safety. And my one other thing that I think is kind of interesting in terms of visitor experience, as museums and science centers, as we start to go back to those attractions, one company has taken it upon themselves, so touching things is very difficult. So they are giving visitors a stylus. Therefore, you use the stylus to touch all of the touch screens or what have you. So small cost, but it can be branded, and it's a take home. You can use it for the next one, perhaps.
Those are great examples. Thank you. And again, we can get those up on the blog after we get together. And your Dairy Queen experience is such a great reminder of the first step I've suggested, which is you need to start over. Start over your whole operation. It's a new business. It's a new way of people arriving. And if you do take that step back, it will lead you down that path to say, oh, people are driving in. Oh, we haven't told them X, Y, Z. Oh, it's a family coming. Oh, I don't know if I have anything for the kids to do. So it's on and on it goes. Yeah. Any other examples or questions? We were just within the 5-minute limit towards the end of our call soon. So happy to, let's get some other examples or questions up.
I heard of one yesterday, which I've not heard of before, and that was, it goes on the Dairy Queen theme, I guess. But in terms of your payment devices, instead of touching them, they had left a glass, a jar, or something there with popsicle sticks. And so you pick the popsicle and then dispose of the popsicle stick instead of touching the unit. So I've not heard of that one before. They said it could be done with Q-tips, but it's not as efficient as something more sturdy like popsicle.
I guess
Great example.
I think it has to fit with the business, right? I guess my question to the group is just how much can you kind of poke fun at yourself, but not sort of make fun of the fact that we take our health and safety very seriously? I mean, has anybody seen examples where it looks like it goes too far? I don't know. I think it's a fine line, but.
And I think that's a fantastic question. I hope the intention is that you match your brand. And again, it starts, the underlying premise is health and safety protocol absolutely first. But I think what we're trying to do is go beyond the sterile. And I think you've got some great examples of customizing it to either kids or people who haven't been here before, or people who are fearful, or people who are used to a professional brand. And I think that's the connection in terms of the visitor journey and the visitor touch points. But to your point, Rebecca, baseline absolutely has to be and continues to be health and safety first.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well. And I think we had 161 operators on a webinar earlier this week that may have been a little bit shocked about what that's going to entail. And, we've been talking about it. And I guess, here, so I got, 2 experiences. I've got one as kind of a leader of a region, but then 2, where I'm at today as a business. So, we're getting ready for people here this weekend, just with just 2 of us. Normally we would have a staff of between 8 and 10, but because of the arguing going on in Ottawa, we don't know if we bring people in, if we're going to be able to pay them or not. So there seems like there's almost like there's two kinds of clients right now. So, like Jill would know, and Fran and Rebecca, like from Northern Ontario, we have our avid, so whether they're a snowmobiler or a fisherman, like these are the hardcore people. So those people are coming no matter what you tell them. You couldn't tell them to stay home. So you couldn't. So those are the people that we're catering to start. And so we've got a lot of situations here around supply chains, everything else, but we've just, we're just going bare bones right now and for that crowd. But we also know there's a lot of interest in Northern Ontario as a destination. So we switched our marketing focus to domestic quite some time ago, thinking that we were going to see a huge decrease in visits to Northern Ontario travel. They're up 167% over the same period last year. So there's a lot of interest, but then we hear the research saying that people don't feel comfortable traveling, and maybe it's somewhere around 10%. So there's a real, the real curve in front of us is how do we convince people that it's safe to travel and ensure that it's safe to travel. I guess that's the real big issue for for all of us moving forward. And I think as people start to get out and about, and I know after the shutdown, like the first time I went to the grocery store with a mask, I mean, it was a little unsettling, and you really didn't, but as you get out and start doing things, you get more and more used to it. So you do. So that's going to be the huge challenge for us is convincing people that it's safe to get out and to start to do some of these activities.
Thanks, David. And again, that's the fourth point of this process I was trying to introduce, which is communicate. And part of the communicating is at the regional level, and part of the communicating is at the operator level. So we've made a real commitment on the Rhubarb Collective to keep this to half an hour, and I can see Rebecca getting anxious. We're a couple minutes over, but I'm just going to wrap it up by saying a couple of things. First of all, again, thank you so much for joining us. The second thing I want to say is we'll get that blog post up, and the reference points for all the sites I mentioned to will be on there, and supplemented by a couple that you've been given. And I want to do the lead in to Amanda Jopling's lead next week, which is, the title is Leveraging Technology and Embracing the Outdoors, Hot Trends and Visitor Experiences. To disconnect or connect, that's the question, she says. New visitor experiences are emerging, born from the constraints we are living due to COVID. Join us to delve into the digital museums and attractions embracing AR and VR during lockdown to rediscovering nature as restrictions ease. And if you don't know what AR and VR is, you really need to join us next Thursday. So same time next Thursday, 2 o'clock. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.